So, according to John, this is the third time Jesus appears to his disciples after the resurrection. I don't think it's something you kind of get used to be honest. But in the second one, a second appearance, which we read in chapter 20, Jesus has appeared to the disciples and has given them the push off into a new mission, a new agenda. I am sending you as the Father has sent me. But there's no more specifics as they're gathered there. And so Peter and John and a few others head back to where they came from. They head back to Galilee. And they're sitting there, maybe because they didn't know what else to do. They're twiddling their thumbs. They're just thinking, what's next? We don't know what to do. And so Peter, still at the very heart of being the leader of the group, says, well, I'm going fishing, and everyone else follows. So was he just trying to get on with life again? Were they just going back to what they knew? Maybe for Peter there was something about a distraction, because still haunting him might have been the fact that he promised Jesus he wouldn't let him down. And then he let him down 3 times, even though Jesus knew he was going to do it. And so they go off fishing, and they fish the whole night. These professional fishermen, okay, maybe they've not been doing it for a few years, but the whole night through, the best time for fishing on Galilee, and they catch nothing. And struggling back to the shore, 100 meters away, after a long night, bleary-eyed, hungry, probably cold and wet, they hear a voice 100 meters away shouting, "Have you got any fish?" Now, as the fishermen are coming back, tired and drained, and someone says, "So, have you caught any fish?" Maybe it feels a little bit mocking. Clearly they've not got fish. And then a command, throw your nets on the other side of the boat. Now this sounds familiar. And if we know from the story in Luke chapter 5, this is exactly what happens then at the original calling of Jesus to say that they would be fishers of men. And so Jesus is recognized. And immediately Peter, just usually what he does, that kind of typical impulsiveness, grabs his coat. He's 100 meters away from the shore, grabs his cloak, jumps in the water and starts swimming back. And the others, well, they bring the boat in behind him. And so they get there and they haul, after they got the haul of fish, and they bring it on. But Jesus is already there with some coals on a fire, cooking some bread and cooking some fish. He doesn't need their fish, which they caught at his command. He's actually got some of his own. And so Jesus is there, he's making them breakfast, but yet he somehow still seems different. We get that from where they wanted to say, "Who are you?" even though they knew who he was. It's because this is resurrected Jesus. This is Jesus like in the new form that we will be one day, this resurrection body. They knew who he was, but they weren't entirely sure. And so they share this breakfast together. Now, I don't know where the phrase the elephant in the room came from. It's known to imply that overwhelming sense that there's a problem or a situation between people or parties, and everyone's pretending it's not there, but everyone knows that it does exist. And maybe that's something which you're familiar with. Sometimes it's the right thing to do to move on from something, but often if it's there in the room, it needs to be addressing in order for there to be peace and resolution. And Peter has seen the risen Jesus a number of times here. He's jumped in the water. He's so keen to see Jesus, but yet over breakfast you can imagine there's still that sense there's something that's not been sorted out. And this is where Jesus takes Simon for a walk. And so they go off. From verse 15, when they'd finished eating, Jesus says these 3 questions which clearly are evoking the 3 denials. And everything is tweaking the memory of Simon Peter. There's a charcoal fire. The light is dull as it's coming up. And Jesus is asking him these 3 questions. He says, "Simon, do you love me? Do you agape me?" And Simon's reply is, "Lord, you know I phileo you. I really, really like you." Jesus asks again. After he asks him, he says, "Then feed my lambs." He asks him again, Simon, do you agape me? Do you love me sacrificially? And Peter says, Lord, you know I phileo you. You know I like you lots. And Jesus says, look after my sheep. And he asks him one more time, resonating with that third denial, Simon, do you love me? Do you phileo me? Changing the Greek. And almost shrugging his shoulders and giving up, Simon says, Lord, you know everything. You know that I phileo you. He's kind of given up. He knows what Jesus is doing. And Jesus replies, feed my sheep. What's so beautiful here is that Simon Peter will be haunted by those denials and that sense of unforgiveness. And Jesus knows for Simon's sake it needs addressing. It's the thing that's holding him back. He needs to be restored. 3 times he asks those questions and echoes those 3 denials. There are many other times Peter would have let Jesus down, certainly, but Jesus is dealing with the thing that will be holding Simon Peter back. And he's gently but decisively dealing with it. He's taking that memory of hurt and pain and letting down, and he's restoring it, redeeming it, and healing it. Jesus tackles it head on. But you notice, he's doing all the hard work, Jesus is. At no point does he ask Simon Peter to, or he expects Simon to bring it up and to grovel and say, I'm really, really sorry. It's Jesus who gently deals with it. He doesn't just put it under the carpet because he knows it needs dealing with, but he deals with it gently and restores Peter. Here is another example of those 2 words from the very first chapter, grace and truth. The truth is, Peter had let Jesus down. Jesus knew it, Peter knew it, and that fact needed addressing, but it needed addressing with grace. Jesus, come from the Father, full of grace and truth. And after each question is answered, Jesus gives him a new command. Feed my lambs, look after my sheep, feed my sheep. In other words, be a shepherd. This is Jesus, who is the good shepherd, now saying, will you be a shepherd? And I don't know if you've noticed it, but these are fishermen who were called to be fishers of men, who've gone out fishing, have caught nothing, and Jesus almost says, no longer are you going to be a fisherman. I want you to be a shepherd. And he goes on to describe what that means when he says, follow me. And he describes what's going to happen to Simon Peter. And we know from church history that Simon Peter ended up being martyred for his faith in the same way he was stretched out and crucified in Rome. But notice as well that before Jesus asks him to do anything, before he gives him the command to feed the lambs, look after the sheep, feed the sheep, whatever, it's all based on, do you love me? Whatever work we seek to do for Jesus, whatever ministry, job, calling, action, activity, service, whatever, it's all based on that fundamental, do you love me? And from that, all our work for Jesus, all our ministry, all our evangelism, everything stems from that first principle. Peter doesn't have to earn or prove his guilt or his sorrow. Jesus knew it already. He knew that he couldn't get over it himself, and Jesus had to address it. So here we have grace and truth and a restoration leading on to a new calling. We see very soon in Acts Peter, the leader of the church. But John and Peter have got very different calls. That's why this chapter's here. Peter is called to lead the church and end up being martyred. John is called to write down and to lead the church in another part of the world and to write down this and other letters and Revelation, we believe. He deals with them differently. But this is a snapshot. This chapter, and one more thing, encapsulates the entire gospel, I think. Jesus came to restore us, to deal with what needs to be dealt with, what needs to be addressed, the hurts, the things that hold us back, the sins that need forgiving, the situations that need redeeming, the memories that need healing, all those things he comes to sort. This is the good news. This is the Gospel of John. The Gospel of John about Jesus, who came from the Father, full of grace and full of truth.